New Stir the Pod podcast show. I'm your host, Trevor, and tonight we are joined by Andy. Andy, how you doing tonight?
Yo!
All right, and we're also joined by Alex. Alex, how you doing tonight?
Yo.
And we are here with the second annual March Madness Pandemonium. What do we even call it? March Madness show? Selection show. I mean, I'm excited. I know Alex is excited. Do you just want to run by the rules real quick? Andy's not that excited. You see he's kind of still on his little Cabo trip right now. Hopefully, he got that flight half off at United. But, and Alex, do you just want to take it away? Tell us what everything just the past 25
All right, so a segment that we're introducing tomorrow in our episode recaps is going to be whatever we're calling this, Challenge Madness through the Pod Madness. And we have a bracket, which we're going to reveal tonight, of the 32 quote-unquote best challenge teams of all time. And so every week we're going to debate the matchups. We're going to have them live on Twitter, and we'll get into a little bit more detail later. But basically what tonight's episode is on a Tuesday is the selection show. We're going to reveal the bracket. And basically we all gave our rankings, which are going to determine the seedings, like the collective ranking. But you guys are going to determine who moves on each round. So starting tomorrow in our recap, if you guys are new, we go live after each episode. So just tune in. And a segment we're going to have is the got some people in the chat now. This segment we're going to have starting tomorrow, Challenge Madness tonight, is to reveal the bracket. I'm pumped. It's March. It's conference tournament season. The real tourney starts next week. So we're in the March Madness mood, baby.
I'm very excited. Andy, what are your thoughts about this? Are you excited? It's March, baby. This is March.
Oh, we sleep in May. I am fired up about this. I've got the March Madness itch in general. Got 2 games going right now. This is my first time participating in whatever we're calling this, Stir the Pod Madness, Challenge Madness, whatever it is. This is my first time. So I am like a kid on Christmas right now. And I could not be more excited.
Trev, what happened last time we did this?
Wow. I mean, the last time we did this, well, first, the worst part about last year was that the challenge stole our idea. They literally stole our idea. Last year, we come out a week before MTV did. We come up with the bracket, set up the teams, the voting, everything similar, right? Oh, 1 week goes by, MTV, the challenge, verified Twitter, makes it official one. So here we are. It is Tuesday live, March 9th. I will bet my life in the next week or so, the challenge will come out with some BS bracket. Last year, we did best seasons of all time. And this year, we decided to switch her up a little bit. We wanted to do something different, obviously. And Alex, do you want to tell everybody the format and how we or I guess then we can just dive right in.
Yeah, so just a few quick ground rules. What it is we decided to do challenge teams, and we decided to settle on pairs. So I'll just recap the seasons real quick. Basically, we're talking Fresh Meat 2, Rivals, X's, Rivals 2, X's 2, Bloodlines, Rivals 3, War of the Worlds, and Final Reckoning. So there's 10 different seasons. I think that's all of them. 10 different seasons. We kind of picked, and there's a few different ways you can look at it. I think we kind of overall did like just the best performances in that single season, eliminations, where they finished, impact on the game, all those types of things. So that's what we're going to do. And tonight we're not going to get too much into like any single matchup. We're just going to reveal the bracket, give our overall thoughts on the 4 regions. And then tomorrow we'll debate the actual first round matchups.
Yeah, and tomorrow we will post the first round matchups, and it will be just a voting on Twitter as well. You guys determine who moves on, who gets eliminated, and all that. And no, before anybody asks, there's no redemption house, no NIT bracket or anything like that. This is the tourney. This is going to be it. The end.
That's exactly what TJ would say if there was a redemption house. So we'll get into that.
Very sketchy. So before we begin, I think the only way we can officially begin is with a nice little get the blood going, get the March Madness music. So with that being said, we are heading over to the Dome region. The Dome region is our first region tonight. Got our little bracket. Make sure we zoom in. Can't see anything. All right. So our number 1 overall seed in the entire March Madness bracket is Emily and Paula. A very, very strong team. Obviously, you guys know. We had them number 1 overall. Coming in the 8th spot in their first round matchup is Jen and Noor, a surprising team. Didn't think they would make the cut, kind of on the aspects of the end line, but they got in. Coming in at the 4 spot, CT and Adam, a very strong team, going against the 5. Bananas and Frank. Bananas and Frank, a Rivals 2 versus Rivals 1 matchup. Very interested to see which way this goes. Coming in at the 3 seed, we got Jordan and Sarah, a very good Battle of the X's 2 team, taking on Leroy and Naya, another Battle of the X's team. Jordan and Sarah did not compete against Leroy and Naya because of Naya's disqualification in the finals. And then we got our 2 seed, Evelyn and Paula, another very strong team winning it all, coming against the 7, Bananas and Nani. Bananas and Nani, kind of a surprising team. Didn't think they would make the cut either. So as you can see, this was our first 16 people, I guess. 8 teams, 16 people. So this is our Dome region. So I'm trying not to spoil anything. That's where we're at. So Alex, Andy, what are your thoughts on the initial Dome region?
I mean, I think you kind of have to start at the very top, just in terms of Emily and Paula are number 1 consensus ranking. It kind of feels like Gonzaga versus the field. We'll see what happens in the later rounds. But I think obviously we recognize them as being the number 1 overall seed. I'm just taking a look here to kind of see what some of our sleepers matchups might be. I think Jordan and Sarah at a 3 seed. That's a pretty good 3 seed. I mean, they were champions. I think what we'll see as we go through a lot of these teams is that like seeding doesn't necessarily correlate with if you won first place or not, just because all the seasons are different. So I think Jordan and Sarah is a good 3 seed. I think, and then you could get 2 Paula championship teams in the final of this region. So I think this is a good region.
Andy, what are your thoughts?
So one quick side note, Trev, when we go forward, as we go through the other brackets, I think it'd be nice to throw in the seasons as we set them. I think you started saying it at the end. But just so that way the viewers and listeners at home are on the same page. One thing that stuck out to me, I love this bracket, Paula being a 1 and a 2 seed. Who would have ever thought someone like her to be included with 2 good teammates like this? It'll be interesting. I'll tell you, the one team that I like a lot is CT and Adam. Keep in mind, Adam was like he was the Diddy Kong to CT's Donkey Kong throughout this whole season, but it was everyone against them during Rivals, and they put up quite a fight. And great season. I loved it, but I think this is like Gonzaga against the field.
I would also just say real quickly, I think maybe not necessarily underdog, but I think the most underrated resume on here is maybe Leroy and Naya. I mean, they're a 6 seed and probably rightfully so, but like you think back to their performance on that season. I mean, the 2 of them won 3 eliminations. Leroy won a 4th. So like Leroy was 4-0, and then he obviously gets 2nd place with Teresa. But they were just like a team that got thrown in every other episode, taking out Bananas twice. Like they had a solid resume.
Yeah, I mean, the team I like out of this one has to be, though, the number 1s. Like we said it, the Gonzaga of the worlds. I mean, Emily and Paula, what a performance they had. I mean, I would love to see the official. I wish we had it. I wish I did my research and stuff. But daily challenges, what were they? Like 6 of 10? 6 of 8?
Emily and Paula, I know they won 6. Probably something right around there, yeah.
I mean, they were just dominating. It wasn't even really close. Leroy and Naya, very underrated team as well. I like to see how they go against Jordan and Sarah. Obviously, they won the season, Jordan and Sarah, but another strong team. But probably my favorite matchup, and I kind of hinted at it earlier, was that CT and Adam versus Bananas and Frank matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very interesting matchup. I think I would probably lean towards CT and Adam still, but don't sleep on Bananas and Frank. I think Frank is kind of 50-50, like you either love him or you hate him. There's no in between. And I like Frank a lot. I would love to see him back. I heard some whisperings about him possibly returning to the challenge, but that's probably my favorite matchup of the round. So, anything else about the Dome?
That's a good looking region. I think we're ready for the next one.
Yep.
All righty. Let me just get ready for the next region.
8 down, 24 to go.
God. All right. So the next region we got is the arena. God, what season was the arena? Or was that even a name? I think it was.
I think it was Battle of the Seasons. Boogie
would know. I don't know. All right, so now,
go ahead.
I just don't want to spoil it. All right, so coming in, your number 1 seed, Bananas and Sarah from Rivals 3. One of the best teams ever assembled. I mean, take the money and run, whatever you want to call it. Coming in at the 8th spot. Ooh, surprising team, Mike and Leroy. People forget, Mike wasn't even Leroy's first partner. Andy, you must love this pick.
I do. God. We'll get into that.
God. So coming in the 4th spot, we have Wes and Teresa. I mean, Wes, okay. I'm very surprised a 4 spot coming there. And then we got CT and Diem coming in at the 5, which, that could be, how many seasons could that be? 3 you could choose from? So very strong team. Obviously, their alliance is very strong. Coming in at the 3 seed. We got the first one on the board for Andy. We got Wes and Casey coming in from Fresh Meat. Then we got Ty and Emily. I'm surprised Emily and Ty isn't the way you say it. And Ty's shirt's not backwards. Coming in at the 6th spot. Coming in at the 2 seed. The powerhouse, Wes and Kenny. I mean, a very strong team from Fresh Meat, too. Then we got Darrell and Aviv. A surprising 7 seed that maybe some fans don't really remember. So that is our arena side. Let's zoom out now and try not to spoil anything else. There we go. All right, and that is our arena side. Initial thoughts, boys. What do we think?
Well, I like this. I think this could be one. I do think it's very one heavy. Like, I think Bananas and Sarah is coming out of this bracket. I'll say that. But we've got some great matchups. I mean, the 2-7, Darrell and Aviv being a 7 going against Wes and Kenny, a lot to unpack there. I love the 8 seed here, Mike and Leroy. I think this season, their season on Rivals gets overlooked a lot. But for them as an 8 seed, Darrell and Aviv as a 7 seed, you got the Wes and Teresa of CT and Diem. I'm very interested to see how this bracket shakes out, or this side, even though I still think Bananas and Sarah would make it all the way. I think we're in for some entertaining matchups.
Alex?
Yeah, I agree. I think this one's definitely more up in the air in a lot of different spots than the first region. I will say, I'll just get this out there now. If we end up getting Bananas and Sarah versus Wes and Teresa, I'm 100% fine when we debate on air. I'm 100% taking the side of Wes and Teresa. I'm not saying my vote would go there, but I have no problem for the sake of, embracing debate. I'm a big Wes and Teresa fan. And then, the 2-7 matchup, that's a rare one where, I think they're probably pretty close to the right seeds, but the 2 seed didn't win and the 7 seed did. So to have such a big gap there when the underdog actually won the season, I think that's a good one. Ty and Emily, they finished third place, won a couple eliminations round. They had a good season. They were both pretty young. So I think this one, I think you could see some lower seeded teams winning here.
Casey was 18.
People forget that.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised about how low the seed Wes and Casey are. I mean, but people forget, how many eliminations did they win? 5 in a row to start off? Was it 5 or 6?
I think it was four in a row to start, and then they won one later.
Won another one. I mean, I think they're a really good team. I think, like you said, Wes and Teresa, that game Wes was controlling that entire game. And, if it wasn't for production to step in and kind of change it up on him, he might have had another ring. Probably my dark horse, though, might be CT and DM, honestly. I think they're a huge fan favorite, and that is why. I'm not necessarily saying they're the best team. I think you look at it, and like Andy said, very one heavy. I think Bananas and Sarah on paper, if you look at them, by far, they dominate. Like, when you go into the finals, and you already know who's going to win, and that's kind of them. When you look at a CTM DM, I feel like very strong team. They've worked together for, how many seasons? Was it 3 seasons they were a team for? Which has got to be the most. Correct?
I think 2.
2 only? Okay. So, I think they got the fan side on them. I like them a lot. I'm trying to think of who else. But, yeah, that's kind of how I see it. Any other statements?
I think what also might help Darrell and Aviv is when we saw when we did the seasons, there was kind of it was kind of swayed towards some of the older seasons that like we necessarily weren't talking about. But I think most of the challenge diehards, on Twitter, on the STP live chat, they're in the older
Brown's world.
Yeah, I think they would respect and appreciate somebody like Darrell coming in here.
Yeah, exactly.
One last thought that I did pick up on. We got Wes here 3 times with 3 very attractive partners. Normal.
God. Andy, what would you put the odds at for Wes making it out of this region? I mean, he literally has.
Right. He's got 3 chances, and especially on that bottom half, if it's Wes v. Wes, then he will make the, I guess, Elite 8 in theory. But, I mean, from that perspective, I think you got to give him – I would still only say maybe plus 250 because Bananas and Sarah, I'm putting it like minus 300 overall. But the fact that Wes has 3 chances, I would give him plus 250, but I still don't see it happening.
Gotcha. Alex, you like anybody out of this region to make some noise?
I mean, I'm always going to go back to Wes and Teresa. I'm ready for them. And I mean, I do like Wes and Kinney. They were a perfect example of a team that got screwed by the production in a final, and we'll get into that later on. But I think this one, like we said, first one. I mean, they're obviously all good teams, but the first one, I think we're going to see more chalk, whereas the arena could see some upsets.
Absolutely. Any other statements with the arena?
I'm good.
I'm good.
All righty. So then we moving down.
Halfway there.
Halfway done. And we're going to move to the jungle section. So this is going to be the jungle section right here. This was the 7 on top, so we're fine. So the number 1 seed in the jungle is Coral and Evan. A very strong team, a big what would have happened team, I would say. Coming against the 8 spot, Wes and Nani. Ooh, that was a bubble team. Did not think was going to make it. Hopping in the 8 spot. Coming in at the 4. Ooh, Jordan and Marlon. A very strong team that could make some noise, honestly. Coming in at the 5 spot, Vince and Jenna. One of the oddest pairings, I think, to date, honestly. Coming in at the 3 spot, we have Landon and Carly. very strong team. Landon and Carly picking up the dub against another champion, Ashley and Hunter. Ashley and Hunter, another strong team. Take the money and run 2.0 from Ashley. And our last two teams, we have CT and Wes, a very powerhouse team, versus the 7 spot, which is Jill and Pete. Ooh, did not expect them either. So that is the jungle region as we zoom out and get everybody in there. I don't know what happened with Marlon's name. Sorry for that. And there we go. That is our jungle section. So, guys, embrace debate. What do you guys think?
I would say first thing that pops out to me is I think that 3-6 matchup is going to be very interesting. This may be the first matchup so far that has featured 2 champions, or maybe one of the first matchups. Don't have a lot of those. I think it's basically new versus old. Ashley and Hunter, 2 guys who are still around today in the big, steal the money recent season. And Landon and Carly is just one of those things where like they deserve a 3 seed, but at the same time, when you think back to Fresh Meat 2, you think Wes and you think Kinney, and you almost forget that like neither of those teams won it, and you kind of lose sight of Landon and Carly. So I think that'll be an interesting matchup. CT and Wes is a very strong 2 seed. And I don't even know if Coral and Evan are going to make it all the way there to meet them. So I think this one's a little more up in the air.
Andy?
So here's what I'll say. It is anyone's ball game in this bracket. I think you can make a very real case for every single team on here. And I think this is one where I love Coral and Evan. I love their season, but they're not a clear number 1 in my book. Where like Emily and Paula and Bananas and Sarah was pretty obvious. This is, I think, anyone's ball game. I love this side. This is my favorite of the 3 that we've talked about. And like, this is just one of the sides of the bracket where you do not want to go home in this bracket. So I like it. I mean, Vince and Jenna at a 5 against Jordan and Marlon. I've always loved Landon and Carly. I think they played one of the best seasons there possibly ever was. So for them at a 3 seed, and granted, will some people resonate with that? Maybe, maybe not, but no feathers ruffled, and they won it all. But Jill and Pete were up against Wes and his whole alliance. Now, if only Jill and Pete partnered up with a dynamic duo, we'll get into that. But this bracket has me very excited. Trev, I think we lost it.
Oh, I don't know what happened. Let's see.
And I think overall, 1 to 8, the talent of this bracket might be a little less than the first 2, but I think that just leads to a more open region here. Because, like you said, anybody could win. And I think this one might be the one that's if we predicted it and filled in our bracket right here, we might get the most picks wrong.
I personally think this is anybody's game. I love a lot of these teams. I think my sleeper team is Jordan and Marlon. I think that's a very underrated team. Landon and Carly, another good 3 seed. If I were to pick one upset, it might be Ashley and Hunter. And and like Alex hinted at, like I just don't know where the voting is going to go with you guys, how you guys lean towards. I think Landon and Carly, I mean, we talked about Landon did a hell of a job during that season. The fact that they won that season, unbelievable. Ashley and Hunter was kind of a shit show, all them together. And, but what resonates with you is take the money and run and stuff. It's an iconic moment of the series. Obviously not as iconic as Bananas, but still a great moment. I think the worst team in this bracket, honestly, is Vince and Jenna would be my thing.
Interesting.
I mean, think about this. They won 2 overall. Daily. Over who?
Number 2 overall in their season?
Yeah. Yes. But I look at it too, like they won the first challenge, but then they were just outshined by Bananas, and it was just overlooked. You know what I'm saying? Like Bananas and Sarah, and like that's kind of how I felt. it was always like he was, and I hate to say it, but riding the coattails kind of thing. Like, don't get me wrong, if Bananas was in the game, Vince still would have done really well. I don't know if he would have been second or even first, but he still would have been a top player in the game. Absolutely.
Agreed.
But it's hard to tell when you have like Johnny in the game, that alliance, and when you win, as many daily challenges as they did, it's hard to lose. So anything else coming from the jungle region? Any final remarks?
I love it.
I
love the jungle region.
God. Alrighty. So then we are going to the final side. The final side was not loading. Is going to be the Redemption House side of things. So now we're zooming into there. Of course, it's not loading now.
I'm curious to see who the last 1 seed is.
Who would your guys' guess be for the last 1 seed? Who have we not seen?
I'm a big Kenny and Laurel fan.
Yeah,
Don't know if they're going to have enough to make the 1 seed without winning it all, but
All right, so little spoilers there. But coming out of our 1 seed is, the boys called it, Kenny and Laurel, taking it at number 1. They will be taking on the 8 seed, Cara and Theo, kind of a new team. Didn't know if they would make the list. I really like Theo. Hope to have him back on the challenge soon. Get his eye fixed. Coming in at the 4, another Cara team, Cara and Laurel. Very strong team. I feel like these guys, the love-hate relationship between these two is just off the rails. The 5 seed we got, Cara again. What is this? A hat trick of Caras right here. Cara and Cook, another underrated team I think people forget about, honestly. And then we got the 3 seed, Bananas and Camilla. I think when I think of this team, I just think of the Bananas poking his head into the room scene when she's going crazy.
Isn't that when she goes in the pool?
Yeah, he bites when she just literally walks into the pool. Yeah. Great scene. Versus Derek and Diem, a very underrated team. I hope people recognize how good of a team this honestly was. Coming in against our last 2 teams, we got Bananas and Tyler. A team that we think about, the T-Bone, one of the great moments of the challenge history, versus who will be the last team? Tina and Kenny. Kenny making the list again. Another strong team, but can they take out Bananas and Tyler? So that is our Redemption House bracket side, and now you can see it completely right here. Guys, embrace debate. What are we thinking?
A lot of Cara. I really just like that 4-5 matchup, Cara and Laurel against Cara and Cook, because that's a lot of similarities. She finished second in rival seasons, finished behind Paula, and had a very good female partner. So honestly, I feel like this is maybe you could talk about this one for hours and be close to 50-50. I think maybe just the name factor of Laurel will carry that one more than anything. But I think obviously you have a great 1 seed. I think this 1 seed is an example of a team that did not win, but they won almost every fucking challenge. They completely flipped the house upside down. So it's all, not all first places and second places are created equally. And I think this is an example of that. And then just lastly, I think, I guess maybe a sleeper at the 2 seed is Bananas and Tyler. I think you can't end a season a whole lot better than they did. With winning that T-Bone and then winning the final. Obviously that kind of, coincides with Wes and Kenny getting screwed over. But I think there's a lot of interesting first round matchups, and I think there's going to be good matchups every round here.
Absolutely. Andy, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. 3 Caras is 3 too many for me. But I will say at least two of these were older Cara, and I used to like Cara back in the day. Now she's just a nut job. But I do think this is going to be very interesting. I think if I were to be picking a all-star challenge duo, one guy and one girl to compete, I'm picking Kenny and Laurel any day of the week. And granted, they didn't win their season. At the same time, they dominated. But Bananas and Tyler, they played rivals as perfectly as I think you could have, and ended up as champs as a result. Tina and Kenny, great team. I was a big fan of Derek and Diem as well. People forget Derek was making moves before CT was. But I think this is one where 2 through 8, anything could happen. But if people know Kenny and people know Laurel, I think they're going to come out of this. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that team, obviously you've said it. I mean, it's one of your favorite seasons. Hopefully we'll get a third one soon. But I think that team, if you look on paper, is one of the best of all time, and they're 1 seed for a reason. And like you kind of said, you look at 2 through 8. I do want to give respect to Bananas and Tyler. I think that is a really good team, and maybe there's like it goes like 1 little break, 2, and then break, and then 3 through 8. I think Bananas and Tyler is a very strong team as well. And then it's kind of everybody else in that section. Like, I look at Bananas and Camilla as a 3 seed, and yes, they're a good team. They won this season and stuff, but like, it's not like a team like I loved. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a team that's enjoyable. But that's my opinion. Obviously, you guys have your own and what you guys think. So,
I think that could lead. I was just thinking this. I think that could lead to a very interesting second round matchup of Bananas and Tyler versus Bananas and Camilla, because he won those seasons back to back. There was no seasons in between. Obviously, really good partners both times. So I mean, that was I don't want to say I can't say peak Bananas because he did fucking 20 seasons after that. But I mean, for a guy to win, to go into 2 different seasons with 2 partners and win back to back like that, very impressive. So I think that could be an interesting matchup because I mean, that's again like obviously he killed it in both seasons, so you could go a couple different ways with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Any last one? Go ahead.
Well, I would just say to piggyback off that, I think in both of those seasons, I would not put him as the favorite at the start of each of those seasons.
Yeah.
So that was probably, I think that's probably prime Bananas. Now, granted, his prime has lasted about as long as Tom Brady's, but that's when he was just a force to be reckoned with. And I think those back-to-back seasons was when he really separated himself as this guy could be the best to ever do it.
Absolutely. Any other lasting remarks on the Redemption House?
I think you got a great 1 seed, a really, really good 2 seed. Anything else can happen.
Yep.
Absolutely. So now that we've looked at all 4 sides, now we kind of zoom out. Can you guys see everybody on this right now?
Yeah.
So what are we thinking? Who has a good path to the finals, would we say?
I think the 1 seed that might have the hardest path, I think I would maybe say Coral and Evan.
I agree. As a non-champion to come in and take it all the way, it could be the first 1 seed out. Could be a UMBC exit.
Yeah, like Xavier, Florida State.
Well, okay.
Well, and I think on the flip side,
at least they made the tourney.
Watch it. On the flip side of that, I think the easiest number 1 seed path is Emily and Paula, because if Emily and Paula come out of the dome, which I think they will, I don't care if it's Coral and Evan or CT and Wes or Brandon Carly, whoever comes out of that bottom part, I still think Emily and Paula steamroll them. Whereas on the other side, if Bananas and Sarah make it out and Kenny and Laurel make it out, that's going to be a hell of a matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Mikey the Doctor wrote, sorry, I couldn't see the chat for the majority of tonight because I had the bracket over it, but now that I see it, Mikey the Doctor writes, do we have odds on these top dogs? I would say probably to win it all would probably be minus 450 for Emily and Paula is where I would have it. Is that too high?
Minus 450?
I think they've got to be the heavy favorites, right?
450?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Who's stopping them?
I mean,
and Sarah?
There's 31 other teams.
Who?
I was gonna say Emily and Paula the favorite, but at about plus 200, plus 250.
I don't know about that.
I would say I like what Alex is saying way more than what Trev's saying. I mean, that's just bananas.
The thing is, like Gonzaga right now, for example, to win it all is like minus 150.
Not 450?
Okay? I'm not done. There's half the number of teams. So you move on around, it's easier. So that's how
not 150 to 450. Now
maybe I overreacted. Maybe it's minus 250 or 200. They're the top dog at minus 200.
I would say for the 1 seeds, this is how I would spell it out for the 1 seeds. I would put Emily and Paula at plus 150. I would put Bananas and Sarah at 200. Kenny and Laurel at 225. Coral and Evan at plus 300. Because Bananas and Sarah are going to have to face Kenny and Laurel. That'll be a tough matchup. Whereas Emily and Paula probably have their ticket to the final already. What else is new? Very their season-esque. But I would say 150, 200, 225, 300.
Okay.
For going around.
So let me go this route. Looking at the whole bracket, who would you say has the best chance to make the Final Four that is not a 1 or 2 seed?
Because
I think
Final Four.
I think most of them are going to be a 1 or 2 seed, but I think we could see somebody else sneak in there.
I'm curious to see. I think if there was going to be a team, I like Landon and Carly, a 3 seed coming out of that jungle region in the bottom left. I think that is the region that it could be anyone's game. And also in that region I really like is Jordan and Marlon, another strong team. I would love, honestly, if those two were paired together, 2 years later when Jordan has, a full season under his belt and stuff, I would love to see how they would have performed. So that's a team I really like.
I think maybe CT and Wes. I think it's going to be someone out of that corner of the bracket.
No 2 seeds.
What? Oh, no, 2 seeds. Oh, ooh.
Yeah,
it's got to be what you just said then, Trev, because
thank you.
Other one, you're welcome. Every other one I think is just too heavy. I mean, we talked about it in the Redemption House. There's Kenny and Laurel, little drop, Bananas and Tyler, big drop, everyone else. I think that's kind of the same for Dome and Arena, whereas the Jungle could be anyone's game.
Absolutely.
I would say I agree with all that. My only last 2 comments is my answer to that would be Jordan and Sarah as a 3 seed. They were champions. They had a very good season, but eventually in the bracket, they're going to end up facing Emily and Paula. So if they had a better placement, maybe them. But aside from that, maybe, and I'm just looking at all like 3 and 4 seeds, maybe Bananas. And this is like, again, a reach. Don't think it's going to happen. But maybe Bananas and Camilla, just for the simple fact of if he goes against Bananas and Tyler, like we said, that's a very similar time in his career. That would, if he beats Bananas and Tyler, that would bring him to the Elite 8 against probably Kenny and Laurel. But maybe, something crazy happens before then. So I don't know. I would say Bananas and Camilla, Landon and Carly, long shot Jordan and Sarah. What are the odds? I was just going to ask, do you have a question? Because I have another question about the overall bracket.
I was going to ask, what do you guys think is the biggest underdog of the entire tourney? And I was going to say, and hopefully these odds are a little bit better for Andy, but like plus 10,000 on Mike and Leroy, or is that too high?
I was just going to ask my question is going to be, what do we think the odds are on Mike and Leroy? What about the odds for them to win the whole thing?
Oh, yeah.
I would say plus
think-
10,000.
I don't think plus 10,000 is out of the equation. Scroll back out, Trev, for me real quick. And I think one of the other reasons why it's got to be Mike and Leroy's, I think it's got to be someone on that right side, because whether it's a 1 seed, whether it's a favorite or a dog, that right side is tough just to make the final. So you look at really the 2 8 seeds there, Mike and Leroy and Carr and Theo. Carr and Theo were a real good team. They're a real good team.
They were.
I love Mike and Leroy. But I do think plus 10,000 is probably pretty accurate.
Another statement I was going to ask, Alex, do we have on tap the last 4 teams out? So like the last 4 teams that didn't make the cut.
The first 4 out.
First 4, sorry. That's what I meant. Sorry. I don't know what it was for.
I do. I have.
Oh.
Yeah. So when we did our consensus rankings that got us the top 32 on the bracket, we all kind of went a little past 32 just to get, some breathing room there. So like there was, teams that I had ranked in my top 32 that did not make the cut and whatnot. But our average rankings, I do have the first 4 out. I'll just read them all 4 at once, and then we can kind of give our thoughts on them. So the 4 that just missed the cut for the challenge challenge madness bracket were Bananas and Tony, Final Reckoning, Jasmine and John A, Rivals, Evelyn and Luke, Fresh Meat 2, and Cara and Jamie, Bloodlines. I think I mean those are all 4 obvious. I mean those are all 4 really good teams. If they made the thing and got the right matchup, they could have been like a 11 seed VCU here. I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
what sticks out to you there?
Of those 4 teams?
Yeah, I mean obviously Cara and Jamie are a champion, but they're just the demise of how bad that season was.
So. Before, when we did our picks, I'd like to make a confession that I put 0 Bloodlines people on my top 32. I just thought it was a disgrace to even have them on there. That season was horrible. I just want to forget that season. As a champion in those 11 seasons or 10 seasons that we had, they probably should be in this list regardless, as an 8 seed or whatever. So for them not making the tourney, I do take partial responsibility for that. So that team's surprising that it didn't make it. Bananas and Tony also sticks out to me. But then again, I mean, that team was kind of like the best that never was. Like on paper, that team is like, how can this team be, beaten or whatever?
Yeah.
And then you literally look at what they did, and they really didn't do much on the season. So, I mean, it is what it is. But, I mean, Bananas has enough teams as it is already. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you think about Bananas and Tony, and I think what would push them to make the cut would be just kind of the overall impact that they had on the season. It really was the whole house against them the whole time. But, yeah, you said, they didn't really – maybe they won 1 elimination. They didn't win a whole lot of challenges. So it's kind of like it's kind of like that team that has all the 5-star recruits and they score a lot and they're always on ESPN, but they're just over 500 and then they miss the tourney.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Can we get Tony back?
I mean, I'm surprised Tony and Shane didn't make the list. I mean, that's just a fun team.
Well, Boogie brought up someone who also didn't get the cut, Zach and Freckle Tits. And that's a very interesting pairing with a whole lot of hostility. That's one of those. They were partners, and the second they lost, they probably never talked ever again and will never do it.
Yeah. Corey and Mitch was Boogie Brown writing about Corey and Mitch. Corey and Mitch actually did receive some votes. Paulie and Ninja did receive votes. Zach and Amanda was very close to the cut as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else stuck out to us, but I think that was basically it.
Oh, Preston and Knight?
That was only from you. Anything else? Are we set to wrap this up? Any other final remarks?
I think I'll just kind of recap what I'm envisioning for the segment and everything, and for all the fans listening. So if you guys are listening on the podcast version, just remember that we go live after each recap, and this is just our selection. So tomorrow, what's tomorrow? Episode 13 of Double Agents.
I believe so.
So for our episode recaps, we always have a few segments, and we're introducing one tomorrow, which is going to be the first round of Challenge Madness. So there's going to be 16 matchups. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on all of them. But basically, this is going to be just a segment that we tack on to the end of our recaps. And then we're going to open the polls on Twitter sometime Wednesday morning-ish. Keep them open till about Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon. So while we're live recapping the episode, the polls are still going to be live. And then once the polls close on Twitter, that's going to decide who goes on. So we made the seeds, but whoever advances is completely up to you guys. Feel free, come on and embrace debate. I think some of these debates, especially in the later rounds, could get contentious when we have some of the best teams going up against each other. But I'm excited for this. This is going to go right into the end of real life March Madness. So I'm pumped.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, Mikey the Doctor writes, can we get a winner prediction from each of you? Andy, if you want to start off first, if you just want to give us your prediction of the winner, and how about a dark horse that you can see making it to the national championship or possibly winning? That's not a a 1 seed.
Yeah.
If you have a 1 seed winning.
I'm gonna say, God, I like this question a lot. I'm gonna say my favorite to win it all. I mean, I cannot bet against Mr. Beautiful. I'm taking Kenny and Laurel to win it all. I think they'll make it out of their side. I hope some people don't like the Banana-Sarah dynamic. That pushes them through, and people realize that they absolutely dominated that season, even though they didn't win it. I would say my dark horse to win it all, I'll take a big dark horse.
Are we taking dark horse to win it all, or just
to go really far?
Cinderella story. Okay.
Yeah. That matters. Cinderella story.
Okay.
So my Cinderella is going to be, and so we want to do 3 seed and worse.
It's your call.
I'm going to say Landon and Carly.
Oh,
and granted, that could be a team that loses first round. But at the same time, I think if they make it out of that first round, they could make it out of that side. If God, I'm changing. Audible. My Cinderella is going to be Jordan and Marlon. It's going to have to be. I don't think Landon and Carly are going to get a lot of votes just because people probably don't know Landon as well. Carly was barely even on the challenge, whereas Jordan's still around today, here and there, and him and Marlon had a great season. So I'm going to go Kenny and Laurel win it all. My Cinderella, Jordan and Marlon.
Okay. Alex.
I'm up.
Yep.
I'll go. So this isn't necessarily who we would pick or who we would rank number 1. It's kind of how the bracket lies, who has an easier path than others and whatnot. So this isn't necessarily my number 1 overall team, but my prediction to win this whole bracket is not a 1 seed. I'm going to go CT and West. I'm going CT and West in that bottom corner over there. And the reason is, if they are to go up against Coral and Evan, the 1 seed in that region, I think they have a good shot against them or anybody who might upset Coral and Evan along the way. So I think they might be able to have they have maybe the easiest path of any 2 seed to the Final Four. And then you look at the region above them, obviously they would face Emily and Paula, but maybe Emily and Paula starts to lose a little steam going into the Final Four, going up against maybe Jordan and Sarah or Evelyn and Paula, tough teams. And then that could potentially lead to a Rivals 2 champion Final Four matchup, which would be interesting. What might carry CT and Wes all the way at that point may just be the name factor. Those are two guys who still do the show. They're still great on the show. Emily and Paula haven't done it in several years. So I think the chips just might fall in the right way for CT and Wes to take it all the way. So that's going to be my prediction overall. Champion CT and Wes. My dark horse to make some noise in the bracket. This might be fuck. I'm gonna go Bananas and Camilla. They just kind of stuck out to me. Champion 3 seed. They could be a champion banana 2 seed, make the Elite 8. I have another one in mind that's more of a reach, but I'll just save that till after this. But I'll go dark horse, Bananas, and Camilla.
Okay. The team I see winning it all, I really don't want to copy picks, so I won't. I'm going to go with the number 1 overall seed, as cliche as that is, and going Emily and Paula, which on paper, you can't deny it. They have to be the greatest team of all time. What they did in Rivals 2, I mean, come on. It wasn't even close. The thing I worry about with this team would be obviously the whole voting aspect, and people don't appreciate what they actually did. So if they go against a CT and Adam or Bananas and Frank, what would happen? You know what I'm saying? So I think this team has so much potential to just dominate, but can it do that? Can it get on that train and ride through? So that is the team for me to win it all. My dark horse is actually going to be the lowest seed out of all 3 of ours. It is actually a 5 seed, and it's CT and Diem. And I think it rides a big wave, those two together. And I'm not necessarily saying it, they're the best team, just the wave that it brings with those two people when they're always matched together. It brings a huge wave. Wes and Teresa is a really good matchup, and realistically, I would choose Wes and Teresa over them. I think Wes and Teresa, their whole gameplay that entire season was unbelievable. But I think because of the name, CT and Diem will carry them over. And then when they go against Bananas and Sarah, I think it gets real interesting on who wins that voting. So that would be my dark horse, sleeper horse, Cinderella team of the tourney. So
good picks. Yeah. I think just one last thought. I'll just looking at the bracket. I think I think we could see, and I would root for this because I think it would just make the whole thing interesting. I think Darrell and Aviv could be a 7 seed that sneak through, and if they do, they could face Wes and Casey team that they beat in the final of Fresh Meat. So if things fall right for them, I mean we got ourselves a Florida Gulf Coast situation over there.
I just think it's hard for them to beat Kenny and Wes. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
It's the opposite of what Trev was saying about the whole CT and DM potentially getting votes. I mean, Darrell, I still don't think people nowadays give Darrell enough credit for what he's done for the challenge. And Aviv, I mean, hasn't done shit. So, and then they're going against Wes and Kenny, who, I mean, Wes is probably one of the ugliest guys to ever do the challenge, paired with one of the most handsome, the homo. But I think that's what's going to make it a big, big uphill battle for Darrell and Aviv. But they're at a 7 seed. That is, if you look at what they did, it's shocking that they're a 7 seed.
Yeah, and I agree. I think if you look at this team and I just think it's the matchup they got is just a nightmare for that team. I think if you match them up against, I guess I was going to say the other 2 seeds, like Evelyn and Paula, I think they would take out Evelyn and Paula. I think if you go to the other side, Bananas and Tyler, I think it's a lot closer than Wes and Kenny. I do think CT and Wes is a very strong 2 seed coming out of the jungle side. I don't think they would win that matchup. But kind of just have the dominoes fall. Like if they played Evelyn and Paula, I don't think Evelyn and Paula would win that matchup. But that's how I see it.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to win heavy underdog. I think for the whole bracket, I think there's going to be some percentage of fans, though, that are going to vote solely on like, oh, did this team win the challenge versus a team that didn't? I don't think a lot of people are going to do that, but I think some are, and that might, help some of these lower seeded teams like Adrel and Aviv, like maybe an Ashley and Hunter, who are lower on our seedings but won a bad season or something that might boost them up.
Absolutely. The one thing I want to bring up to you, and I know we kind of hit on it earlier, but where do you guys what do you guys think about Coral and Evan being a 1 seed? Obviously, they dominated how many episodes were they on? Like 7 or 8, and they won 6 out of 7 or whatever it was daily challenges. So the best that never was. Obviously, it's like they had a postseason ban almost, and this is their tourney now. So how do we feel on that team?
That team was terrifying for anyone who was trying to go up against them. If they stayed healthy, I think they are absolutely winning that season, and honestly, doing it easily. I think if they would have stayed healthy, best it never was is like the perfect way to describe it. But I mean, my God, they won everything. Everything.
Yeah, Coral and Evan are like that 14-2 NFL team that gets the number 1 seed, but they play in a dome. They don't have a great defense. They don't travel well. So, if they get in trouble at some point outside somewhere, that's what I see Coral and Evan as. But I think, to your point, it speaks volumes to the fact that I can't remember exactly what, but let's say they were the 4th overall 1 seed, which I think they were. There's 3 teams ahead of them in our collective rankings, and they went home as early as they did. Like, can you imagine? Like, they would be for sure the number 1 seed in our bracket if they even made the final. So I think the fact that they are still a 1 seed, even though they didn't even make the final, just shows how dominant they were in their time.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Any other lasting remarks? Are we good to wrap this up?
I'm fired up, baby.
This is March. Sleep in May or whenever this bracket's done. And I guess the real question is, the bracket will be done kind of by the finale of Double Agents, right? It should be pretty damn close.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how the reunion episodes shake out.
Yeah. So,
but I'm also excited to bring this segment into the fold right now, because we are still. I mean, if we talk about Double Agents season-wise, like, we're kind of dragging on a little bit. We're getting towards the end, so I think the end of the Madness bracket lined up with the final challenge, I think it's going to be just big for the pod.
Yeah. So with that being said, thank you guys for listening to a brand new Stir the Pod podcast show. I've been your host, Trevor. You have been listening to the 2nd annual March Madness bracket. Tomorrow, March 10th at 12 p.m. noon Eastern time, Alex? Are we going live? 1 o'clock with the first polls?
Yeah.
1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Eastern. Be on the lookout for the first matchups of the March Madness bracket. I've been your host, Trevor. Thank you, guys. Love you guys. Follow us on Twitter at Stir the Pod. Shout out Duffy. Bye.